Consulting Club President and Darden 2016 Future Grad.
Hi, I'm Sri. I'm, as you might know, one of the person behind these videos. So I'm glad to be actually on this side of the camera.
Great.
All right.
Shall we get started with the case?
Yeah.
Okay. Our client is a national auto repair services chain, and it has seen its total sales decline. It competes with other national chains that provide similar products and services. Its services include oil changes, brake repair, tire changes, and other similar type needs for your auto services.
Okay. All right. This is an interesting problem. So what I understand is our client is a national auto chain, and their sales have been declined in the last 1 year. And in terms of the kind of services that they offer, they're pretty similar to what our competitors do offer. And just so that I understand the client a little better, what I'm imagining is a kind of service chain similar to Manic, where they probably do not have any inventory of cars and not buying or selling used cars. All that they're doing is just services.
That's correct, yes.
Okay. And you said it's only a national auto chain, right? Are they concentrated in a specific kind of region, or are they well spread?
They're well spread equally around the United States.
All right. I think I have enough. Do you mind if I take a moment to structure my thoughts?
Go for it.
All right. So the way I would like to think about this is, given that we are looking at the total revenue, I would like to understand how we are doing across the different market sizing parameters. So which is why I have my market sizing funnel, starting with the total size of the market. Then what kind of share do we have of this market competing with our competitors? And then within the company, what kind of services we offer and what's the price point. So looking at the market, I would like to understand any of the key trends that are there at an overall size of the market. Not only just in terms of how many cars there have been, but also in terms of what macroeconomic factors have been impacting this. This becomes important, especially because services or car repair services is something that has a bit of a lag in order to take impact. So, for example, after the recent GFC. After the recent financial crisis, if people have been buying fewer cars, that's something that can impact maybe more recently in 2012 or 2013, just because it's a lag in terms of how that's going to play out. On the competitor side, some of the things I'm trying to understand is service mix, just in terms of are we offering similar services, which it seems that we do, but even in terms of what kind of locations our competitors located versus us, just to see how we are differentiated against them. And in terms of alternates to these national auto services chains, I would also like to understand any specialized local car services or potentially even concierge services, like an Audi dealership, which is probably doing more specialized car services versus a national services chain like us. On the company side, again, try to understand a little more of the service mix, see if this actually meets the demand, understand the capacity. Personally, whenever I've been to Manic, there's not been a single time when somebody looked at my car immediately. I've always had to wait, or many times I was actually sent back. So I'd like to understand if that could be a potential problem here. the price point to see how we compare against similar services that are being offered by a competitor. Based on this, I'd like to start with the market. Do we have any sense of the overall market size? What have been some of the trends?
No, we don't.
Okay, so what I'm understanding is probably there hasn't been anything major that has happened recently, and we don't expect anything changing here.
Exactly. When we looked at the data, there were no major trends that were visible.
Okay, so let me say no trends here, and cross this out. Looking at the competitors, service mix. Okay, just to clarify, it's exactly similar to what we offer.
Yes, I said that at the beginning.
Okay. In terms of location, are we also competing with similarly located chains?
Off major highways in the center of towns, we're pretty well distributed to any access point.
Okay. Have we seen any recent increase in, say, the size of the services being handled by concierge or specialized service units versus national service chains like us? Has there been any major change?
No, there hasn't been a major change in market share. It's still pretty well distributed where they only have a small market share and the most of the services are done by the major chains.
Okay, so the major chains like us still have most of the market then. All right. Looking at service mix, I think this is somewhere where we also think about the customers here. So do we, based on what we have seen in our stores, have we seen any trends where our customers wanted different kinds of services that we're currently unable to offer?
No, the services are pretty standard.
Okay. In terms of capacity, do we usually meet capacity? Are there any busy days versus non-busy days?
Obviously, the weekend we see some higher levels of customers, but this hasn't changed any.
Okay, so am I to interpret that as we are rarely turning away customers, so that's not exactly a concern?
Right, and yes.
Okay. Price points, are we a premium service based model, or is it more like a commodity service?
It's more like a commodity service. Obviously, we have major competitors and we pretty much price on par with them.
Okay. In that case, let me think about the problem a little more. So we're worried about the revenue, which is basically volume times price. There's no change on the price, so volume is the driver of the problem. And as far as volume goes, it is size times the share, and size doesn't seem to be the problem because it's been pretty much consistent. So therefore, something must be going on with the share. So if I'm trying to think about share, which is basically number of customers, the way I'm thinking about this is, well, customers, especially with car services, one easy way to think about it is repeat customers versus new customers. So do we have any information on whether any of these particular types of customers have changed in the last 1 year?
What would you expect?
Well, I am a car owner, so thinking about my car servicing needs, I would actually say repeat is not a major driver, because I probably get an oil service done like once or twice a year at best. So if you're actually seeing a decline in customers, it's probably being driven by the new customers. So let me focus on the new customers a little more. If I'm a new customer, maybe I have a car, I've been using the car for a couple of years now, and I'm being driven to have more repairs. So the way my journey would be mapped out is I would have to be aware of the issue. Then I would have to be aware of what services that are being offered by different kinds of service chains. Then I need to pick a place to drive to, and then I would actually fulfill my requirement of the service. So if I'm thinking about this journey, And given that we already talked about some of these aspects, especially starting with the fulfillment of the service, capacity doesn't seem to be a problem. So this piece is going fine. Picking a place to drive. Now, let's say for a particular kind of services, how is our brand? Do people look at us as a quality brand, or at least compared to customers? Are there any differences in brand?
Our brand is pretty well established and it's not changed.
Okay, so this is not an issue. We are not at a higher price point, so thus cannot be a driver. We are well located. So it seems that this piece is also fine. In terms of awareness of the services or the issue, well, awareness of the issue, usually you have a check engine light or a check oil light. So I think this is usually self-driven. So my hypothesis is, in terms of awareness of the services, that could be a potential problem. So this is something that I would like to explore a little more. So do we have any information on the kind of services that we currently market to and what's the mix?
Yes, we do have that information. So I have information regarding the past 2 years and the marketing spend for different products.
Okay. So what we currently have is the marketing spend and the revenue in 2013 and 2014 across the 4 different kinds of services. Okay, so based on some quick eyeballing, what I do see is we have spent more money marketing for brakes, which is an increase in $50 million, which actually got us an additional $50 million in revenue, so that was good. However, for oil, we went down from 100 to 80. So we decreased 20 million in spend, but we actually lost $100 million in revenue. So oil seems to be very sensitive to marketing. But what is surprising is that on tire, we didn't change how much we were marketing, but we still lost $50 million in revenue. So, and also, just so that I have an overall sense of the total revenues, do you mind if I take a moment to quickly capture the totals on marketing spends and the revenues?
Sure.
Marketing, revenue, totals. So in 2013, we have 100 on oil, 50 on brake, tire 50, others is 25, so that is 225 million. I'm assuming all these estimates are millions.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. And on revenue, we have 550, 300, and another 300, so that's about 1.1 billion. In 2014, so that is 255 million, and in the total revenue is 1.05 billion. So therefore, what we have definitely seen is, compared to the last year, the total marketing spend has increased by $30 million. However, the total revenue has decreased by $100 million. So clearly, the difference in marketing or the additional marketing spend has not been very effective, and we've actually lost revenue instead of gaining some revenue. My initial hypothesis, based on the information that we currently have, is that given that we are losing oil and also tire simultaneously while we got more on brake, first hypothesis, maybe there are some bundled services where maybe oil and tire go together, and because we decreased oil, we actually lost revenues on both of them. So is this some of the packages that we're currently offering?
No, we're not.
Okay, so no packages there.
What else?
Let me think about the customer a little more. So we have a customer who's coming to the store, and there is oil, there is brake, there is tire. So brakes they're definitely getting more of, but oils has gone down and tires has gone down. So looking at that, oh, another hypothesis, potentially the quality of oil that our customers have been using, maybe this is just a market trend in the last couple of years, so quality of oil and the quality of tires that they're using is better, which is why just as a market, there's just a fewer smaller market for them. Is this something that you think is happening in the market?
There's been no change to tire or oil technology that would make it higher quality.
Okay, so there's no change here. Well, car repairs is also a function of how customers are using it. So, do you think there's been any change in terms of education or better behavior? Colder weather, which has reduced the need for oil changes?
No, there hasn't been any of those types of changes that we've seen.
Okay, no changes. So, what I'm trying to understand is, at the store, I'm trying to understand in terms of the needs, what has changed. And it looks like there's no reason to believe that customers require fewer repairs. So the needs have not really changed. So then I would like to think about what is happening from the customer's perspective in just getting to the store itself. So if I'm looking at customers taking action and hence coming to the store, usually the primary drivers of the customers realizing that they need some repairs is they have a check engine light or there's an oil dial. So my new hypothesis is that usually for most of our customers, especially the customers who have some kind of repairs related to oil, that's their primary driver for them to come to a store. And maybe that's kind of a leading product. And once they come to the store, they realize that they have other issues and they realize that they need tire repairs too. Versus them actually coming in requesting for brake or tire services. So in terms of what we see with our customers, do we have an indication of what is the primary service that they request for, or what's the primary thing that they're booking an appointment for, and what's actually the kind of services or the mix of services that they eventually end up paying for?
So our customers, the majority of the time, do come in looking for oil changes.
Okay, so based on what we have just realized, my hypothesis is that oil is a primary driver for a customer to drive into our store, and because we have shifted away from oil in the last 1 year, this has potentially caused us to lose overall business.
That sounds like a strong idea, so what would you want to do next?
So what we should do next is to ensure that oil is a primary service that we are advertising. So in terms of our marketing spend, I would definitely recommend making sure that oil is spending, or we are spending more on oil compared to any of the other services. A very quick fix is just going back to what we've been spending last year.
Okay, so let's talk more about this oil market if that's what we're going to be targeting.
Okay.
I'm interested in terms of what you expect the overall size of the market is as measured by number of oil changes per year that we can expect from the market overall.
Given that we're looking at oil changes, we'll have to, so our goal is oil changes, and in order to estimate oil changes, we'll need to estimate the number of cars. And in order to estimate the number of cars, a good way to do that is segmenting the market by cars that are being used by regular users like you and I, versus cars that are being used for business services like rental agencies or taxi services. So maybe I'll have a small segmentation here, and then just look at the top cities of the country. Does this seem like a fair way of sizing this market?
Sure, go for it.
Okay, so as far as the cities go, just to make the numbers easier to estimate, I would like to break this as large city versus a medium city. And I'm going to assume that about 20% of the country resides in the large cities, like Atlanta, New York, LA, and about 50% of the population resides in medium-sized cities. I'm sure there are also people in the smaller cities who also might require car changes, but that's probably a very small market that we potentially aren't even located in. So I'm going to ignore that for now. In terms of the segments, what I'm going to break this down into is households and businesses. Households and businesses. So in terms of households, what we can assume is in the big cities, the average number of cars per household is 2. And in the smaller cities, I'll assume it's just 1. I'm sure households in LA have way too many cars, but that'll probably balance with New York where there are fewer cars, in terms of the households. So next, we also need to assume come up with an estimate for the number of cars by business, but it's probably a little tough to estimate how many number of rental cars there are or how many taxis are there out there. So what I'm going to propose is actually estimating the number of household cars and then estimating the business cars as a ratio.
Okay.
So the number of household cars that we have so far is 20%. I also need to estimate the number of households first. So in total, there are 100 million households in the US. 100 million households in the US. So 20% of that is 20 million households in the large cities and 50 million households in the medium-sized cities. So within that, the number of cars owned by households in the large cities is 40 million, and in the medium-sized cities it is 50 million. So number of household times the number of cars. For businesses, what I would like to assume is for every 5 household cars, there's probably 1 taxi or a rental car in the big cities, and in the smaller cities, I would probably assume for every 10 household cars, there is 1 taxi or rental car. Is that a fair assumption to make?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. So here the ratio, so it's about 20%, and here it's 10%. So 20% of 40 million, that's 8 million cars, and 10% of 50 million, that is 5 million cars. Now, in terms of oil changes, from my personal experience, they say we need an oil change for every 3,000 or 5,000 miles. And I think on average, people drive 10,000 miles a year. So let me assume 2 oil changes a year. So taxis and rental services probably do extra miles, but let me, for the sake of simplicity, still assume 2 oil changes a year across the board. So this is 80 million oil changes, 16 million, 100 million, and 10 million. So given that we have 2 customer segments here, so in households, the total number of oil changes you can expect in any given year is 80 million in large cities and 100 million in medium cities, which is 180 million per year. And for businesses, what I would estimate is 16 million in the large cities and 10 million in the medium cities. So that's about 26 million oil changes. So I would say, in terms of the overall size of the market, these are the total number of oil changes that that are out there that is being required, and based on some of the information that we have so far, I'm not sure how well or what is the spread of our current marketing expenditure. But one hypothesis is we are potentially not spending enough money for the businesses. So given that they're actually quite a big market here, potentially one of the things we could do is try to have a sales force that can work more closely with the business owners and ensure that we're actually using some of our downtime in serving the businesses for these car services.
Okay, so what is your final recommendation given what we've talked about today?
Okay. So we've had a chance to look at the problem, and what we have realized is oil is a leading product for revenues in our stores, and shifting away from it has caused our revenues to decline. So my primary recommendation is to spend more of our marketing budget on oil services and ensure that that is the primary message across all of our marketing material. In terms of some of the risks, one of the things that we have to be careful about is marketing efficiency, on trying to ensure that we are not spending too much money on marketing where it can potentially be less profitable. So ensure that we are spending marketing money appropriately across the right channels. As a next step, what I would recommend is, given that marketing is not a core capability of ours, we should probably hire a marketing or an advertising agency to understand what are the best marketing messages so that we could market more efficiently. All right?
Great, thank you very much. All right, so should we go from the top?
Yeah.
Review. All right, so in terms of listening to the prompt and repeating it back to me, I thought you did a very nice job of that, and you asked good clarifying questions that enabled you to get a better understanding of the business. So making sure that you knew that we were mostly focused on the decline in revenue for services, and there's no big difference between us and our competitors from the outset. One thing that you could have asked is in terms of revenue decline, we're trying to identify why revenue has declined. Is there anything else that we're looking for? Are we looking for a time frame to turn around this revenue decline? Are we looking for a percentage increase or something along those lines, so that you make sure you've defined whatever the client's goal is from the outset?
Yeah.
Okay. One of the things you said was, this is good. We actually don't think that this is good, because the marketing spend should actually have
a higher multiple.
Yeah.
Right. That is right.
Yeah, because otherwise they're not even breaking even, because there are going to be other input costs that go into break services. So that would be something that you'd want to be careful of.
Yep.
Although not the main problem, so it didn't really trip you up here. You don't do that. So we kept looking at potentially what was causing people to not go in for the multiple services, especially with oil, and we see that oil is going to be the leading product for service. So I thought you did a very nice job of getting there and walking me through your thought process.
So I think this is definitely something that can trip people up, which is especially when they're trying to figure out what's causing a weird trend like this, tire going down. I think this is a weird piece. If the tire thing didn't exist, then it probably would have been pretty obvious, which is, hey, oil, it's a lot more sensitive, so let's just go jump back on oil. But it's a tire thing that actually tripped me up, which is why I was really trying to figure out what's going on. And responding to a what else question, especially when you're trying to hit something and you don't get that, is a little difficult. And personally, I just like to draw things out so that I can show that I'm working on it from different angles. Do you have any tips on how you would probably respond to if you were in a similar situation?
To what else in terms of this? I think drawing things out is a great process. I think that for me, it's always about segmenting, so breaking down the component parts. I think your customer journey did a really nice job of this, and then trying to go through each phase and realize, or each step, and realize what's the outlier here. So what is the change, or what is the difference? And then in this process, like this connection between oil and tire is a bit harder to get to when you're continuing to be asked what else. But the process of the consumer, if you put yourself in those shoes and you think, okay, am I really going to know when my tires are changed or need to be changed or fixed? No, I'm going to know when I need to change oil because of the oil light going on. So I thought that was like a nice way of connecting. The ding in the light, it's like the light goes off.
Yep.
Okay, so I drew out a framework here based off of what my response would have been for this particular case. Of course, I was able to take a little bit more time so I can give you more detail, but basically it's the way that I would have broken it out. So I like to set up my page with the notes given from the prompt. In the top left corner, any questions that immediately come to mind that I might ask as clarifying questions or questions that will inform my framework, I put at the top. And then I always have a point where I'm starring what the goal is. So in this case, it was the identification of the cause for the revenue decline, and obviously in the end, you want to help the client reverse that trend by identifying the cause. So I started at the top with just a very simple revenue is equal to the volume of sales and the price per unit. And it's similar to a profit tree in its simplicity, but obviously if you were to draw a profit tree in this case, the interviewer would know that you were being very rote and not thinking that the problem is revenue, I didn't say profit. So just looking at the revenue side of things. So I then segmented what would go into a change in volume and what would go into a change in price by company changes. So the particular client, what has changed in terms of volume and price, the competitors, the market overall, and then any larger global changes. And then I had a separate column here that I like to just put on the side that's a bucket of opportunities or things that I would also think about in terms of helping to increase revenue. So that's sort of the more creative aspect. And I just wanted to keep it there to let the interviewer know, like I was thinking holistically and outside the box. So in terms of the volume change given company changes, are we seeing a decline because we don't have that information yet? Could it have something to do with a change in our product service mix or a change in our marketing? And then in terms of our prices, has there been an increase or decrease in prices that might change? Obviously, if there were an increase in prices, we'd have to see a drop in volume to balance that out to get the overall revenue decline. And then have we seen something change with the pricing mix for our certain products and services? In terms of competitor changes, I looked at could there be a new entrant? Could they have different products or services that they're offering that we're not? Had they seen a similar increase or decrease, which then of course would get us down to whether or not it would be a change in the market overall? Had they upped their marketing or changed their brand identity that would cause customers to go to them instead of us? Pricing, could they be undercutting us? Could they be selling of quality, in which case they might be taking away from our market share? Marketing changes overall, so maybe there are fewer cars sold. You brought up very nicely that that's usually due lag, so it would have been a couple years before the case that fewer cars would have been sold, or maybe they're more efficient cars, or potentially the notion of maybe I think you said this as well, like has there been a change in the technology with oil or whatever so that they just need fewer services? And then I thought maybe for pricing there are cheaper substitutes, so DIY for example, maybe people have been able to start giving themselves oil changes at home and it's just that much easier at this point in time that more people are doing it. And then global changes, so would there be a regulation change in terms of service requirements because we have to go in and get our cars checked on a regular basis. Maybe people don't have to do that anymore and so they aren't getting their cars checked and getting new services. And then finally for global changes, it might affect our pricing or be an issue with pricing is an economic decline and real price sensitivity. So if I can avoid getting my oil changed twice a year, even if it's not too expensive, maybe I can get it done like on average 1.5 times per year and I'm just getting the service less. Long-term consequences will be negative, but just a thought. And then in terms of opportunities, looking at potentially a marketing increase or change for brand target, that would be one of the things that would come out of this. New products or services that would end up being lucrative to raising our revenue overall and potentially selling the services and products we already have. Dealer partnerships, and this could also be business partnerships, but where you get on board with either the Ford dealer and you say if you are not offering oil changes, we'll offer your customers, oil changes at a 10% discount if they continue to use us.
Interesting.
Yeah, and then international expansion, because we know there's just a national chain to increase revenue, and then potentially maybe going green, so finding ways that they can become more energy efficient in their products and services, and then in terms of what they're able to offer. So that would be kind of like a technological investment here that would help differentiate them. So that was my framework. It's pretty comprehensive, obviously, because I had more time to think about it. But generally, when I thought of profit trees, or revenue breakdowns, and I thought of, the volume and the price, everything to me kind of fit within that in terms of the company itself, and then the competitors, market, global changes, all of those would kind of flow into this. And then there would be things that I could fit in, to these different buckets, but I thought were separate enough that I would just table them on the side.
Interesting. So I'm guessing even if you are doing a profit tree, you probably have these separate buckets, maybe even a variable cost and fixed cost bucket, and you still have the same, rows so that you can actually pick up factors across multiple buckets.
Yeah, exactly. So for example, if we had a fixed cost bucket and we're looking at our company changes, have there been significant increases to like our rental agreements for these properties, or just our energy bills have increased significantly, whatever the cost may be, or our input prices are those more expensive, and then that might come in here and be like global changes. All of a sudden, oil is incredibly expensive, and even the kind of oil that we're using, or there's a cheaper substitute that's able to cut costs for us internally. So looking at it that way was just my way of thinking about it. You don't want to overcomplicate it for yourself. So if this kind of grid framework was too confusing, I think something that would just be pretty simple, and columns and lists would also do the job.
Yeah, and the grid framework is something that I like, and I also is something that I recommend, especially for brainstorming too. And my take is, even if you, for example, variable cost and market, you even if you don't find any factors to put in that specific slot,
right,
it is still okay just because you're still filling out factors across multiple buckets.
Yeah, exactly. Like you can just say NA or just cross it out or leave it blank, and that's fine.
That's completely great. Awesome. So this is a great structure, and I know most of the cases actually just investigating and finding where the issue is. But I definitely want to see how you would be doing the market sizing piece.
Sure. So I thought that your approach was spot on for the larger oil change market. For what I might do to approach the question is change it a bit and make it more specific, because the more specific you get with market sizing, the easier it becomes. And then also, if we're talking about the oil market overall, it's probably information that they have, and so saying, well, we can roughly estimate based off of our current market share from prior data that we have what the overall market size is. Maybe what we want to target is the market size for a particular demographic that will be our target for marketing advertising spend. So one way that I might look at that is, who should we target for increasing our overall oil change sales? And so for me, that might mean change sales, looking at, okay, who are the people that are getting oil changes? So the majority of people that we are getting these oil changes, so we don't get too specific, we make a broad audience that would appeal. And it's probably not young people, right? Because young people are going to be students or young professionals, and they have a lot of things that they're doing. They're busy, they're active, but they're more interested in getting ahead in their studies or in their career and then having fun. They're not going to care as much about the longevity of their Corolla, but they might, but those would be an outlier. So you're not worth targeting them. So let's say like the younger demographic, the millennials, no, we're not going to target the millennials because they might they likely make up a smaller percentage of total oil change sales, harder to appeal to them. And then you think about, okay, let's go up a generation and say, 30s, 40s, family-oriented people. Okay, so that might be good because let's say if it's a family, you might have about 2 cars per family, and there might be a great opportunity there. And then thinking again, the next demographic would be, the older generation, and that wouldn't be ideal maybe because they're driving less, or they have actually their younger family members take care of certain services like their car services for them. So let's come back to this family bucket and think about maybe we can target it more specifically. So if we look at family decision makers, we have the mother and the father, and the father, just a stereotype, is usually going to be working and probably more concerned with car and maintenance services. But if he's busy, or if he is lagging in terms of that kind of care because
Mhm.
its maintenance is not necessarily something that he is giving thought to top of mind. Maybe it's going to be the mother who is
Mhm.
actually going to be the one who encourages that kind of maintenance and making sure that the car is safe, not going to break down in the middle of the road, and taken care of. So I would look at targeting mothers, family-oriented mothers, so between the ages of 30 to, let's say, 50.
Mhm.
And so to get that, what I would do is I would break it down and I would start with, so we're trying to get to the overall oil changes per year.
Mhm.
Uh, And so to know that, I'll want to know the number of vehicles.
Mhm.
To know that, I would want to know the number of households. This is all very similar
Mhm.
to what you did. For the number of households, I would probably get that from women in this age bracket. So, and take a percentage of that. So let's say women 30 to 50.
Mhm.
And then from there, we can get this number from the overall population. So we could have probably started with households here with 100 million.
100.
But I'm gonna go down from here.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay, so there are a lot of different ways that you can do market sizing, and it's kind of what fits with you and how you speak to the interviewer, and maybe they'll guide you and suggest things. So for this case, I'm gonna look at the overall population, and I'm gonna say, so the overall US population is gonna be about
Mhm.
300 million. If we look at people, we split it up among age groups, so we go younger than 50 and older than 50. Let's say that we have 200 million people in this age bracket
Mhm.
and 100 million people in the older than 50 age bracket. And then we break that up further, and let's say equal ratio of men to women. So we're only looking at this, right? Because this is
Mhm.
where we're going. And so if we have equal ratio of men to women, we have 100 million men, 100 million women. And if we were to say, if we were to break this up roughly, like 50% are in the 30 below, 50% are in the 30 above, maybe we'll cut it at
Mhm.
25 just to make it equal. We have 50 million that are in the generation below and 50 million in the generation that we're going to target. So this 50 million here is what I would look at. And then from there, take about, the percentage of households that I would expect. And I would expect about 90% of those would
Yeah.
constitute households with families. So let's say 90% or 45 million.
Yeah.
And so from there, number of vehicles, I would estimate they would have about 2 vehicles per household. So I'd times that 2. So then we come back to this 90 million number. And then oil changes per year, we are looking at 180 million oil changes per year. So because I had different assumptions, I arrived at something slightly different than what you had, but not actually right
It's
on
exactly,
target
yeah.
for the number of households. So that was not intended at all, kind of a fluke. But it's funny how you can get pretty similar even with a different process.
Yeah, and this is actually, so I think both of these are. So this is actually a great contrast of two similar styles. In fact, I remember back when we were practicing, initially almost all the market sizing stages were, okay, 100 million households or 300 million people, and you just keep applying, throwing filter on filter, and you come up with an estimate for the whole bucket.
Yeah.
And usually what I think is, in order to make market sizing a much better exercise, there are two ways in which you can better. The first one I really like is looking at the target. And in fact, I would assume even in a real scenario, you would actually talk through your targets on your rationale behind why you feel that mothers aged between 30 and 250 are the primary target, because that's exactly the number that even they would like. There are always some random census surveys that say, hey, there are 150 million cars in the US, and it's a useless number that most people can't do anything with. So going at it by looking specifically at the segment or targeted segment is a fantastic way to start a market sizing. And another way in which you can make your market sizing slightly more complex and potentially differentiate yourself is try and break it off into segments. Whether that's big city versus small city, business versus regular household users. Because again, I've done market sizing as a real consultant before, and segmenting is almost always the key. So if you can find a way to segment, I think that's even better.
Mhm.
And one thing we would definitely suggest is it's extremely tough to do both of these two techniques on a real, market sizing case. So, some people are more attuned to doing one or the other, and probably one of these two techniques makes more sense in a particular case versus others. So definitely do think about that, and accordingly, do market sizing without overcomplicating it for yourself.
I think, like you said, don't overcomplicate it. There are about 100 ways that you could do it.
Mm-hmm.
I think you did this, and then I did this to a degree, is tell the interviewer what you're thinking first.
Yes.
Before you get into numbers. And that's really helpful to you kind of wrapping your head because you're thinking while you talk about it. And then you get feedback to see if they see that direction as
Mm-hmm.
leading to where they want you to go. And then segment. And then know where you're going, and then start top down and be very clear about your assumptions and reasonable about your assumptions, right?
Yeah.
And so you might have to say, well, this is a bit off, I'm estimating here, but I think it will balance out, and just talk through it. And I think you'll make it a conversation, and it'll work itself out to get you to a good number.
Yeah. And one other thing that people usually worry about market sizing is, what are the numbers to remember?
Mm-hmm.
So 300 million people in the US, 100 million households. I think these are two very easy numbers to remember. Are there any other numbers that you used to remember when you were doing this?
That's about it. I didn't ever do much more than that.
Yeah, because for example, if they want to do market sizing in Brazil, I think it's completely fine to ask the interviewer, so what's the size of the population in Brazil?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's completely fine. The one thing that I would recommend, again, as a professional forecaster, is whenever you're going outside the US, it's always good to have a filter for urban population and then do your math.
Okay.
Because, for example, if you're doing, say, a similar market sizing for, say, China or India,
Mm-hmm.
your starting number cannot be 1.2 billion. Because not everybody is owning a car and is going to get oil changes.
Mm-hmm.
So assume 30% or 40% is urban. And the good thing is, even if you say that, hey, I want to use a filter for urban,
Mm-hmm.
and if you come up with a bad estimate, they'll give you a good estimate.
Yeah.
But showing that you're thinking about that shows that you have the right process, which is great, and which is ultimately what's more important for market sizing.
Mm-hmm.
Whether you came up with 30% or 10%, which was a bad number, I think that's completely fine, and the interviewer will always help you out with that.
Yeah, exactly. It's like you talk through it, you explain, and as long as you're reasonable,
Yeah.
it'll work out.
All right. So these are the tips that we have for market sizing. Anything else that you would like to share just with regard to case prep?
I think getting a wide range of types of cases is very important.
Mhm.
So that's one of the benefits of this case. It's a marketing case and a market sizing case. But the more you expose yourself to the different types of cases, the more comfortable you'll become, because there won't be any real surprises.
Mhm.
Generally, cases are going to follow a framework that fits within one of the major buckets, so that you can approach it and not be completely confused in the middle of nowhere. So getting different types of cases, definitely practicing on smart casing instead of the numbers of cases that you do is important. So taking the time to really get feedback and make sure that going into it you're well prepared, so that it's a useful exercise of an hour rather than spending 3 hours and not getting much out of it because you're so worried about like the numbers or whatever. You get caught up and you're not paying attention to the big picture here, which is just getting more comfortable with these types of problems and being able to speak about them fluidly and comfortably.
All right. So I think that's all that we have. So good luck for your preparation, and feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions.
Thank you.